Hello, everybody. For those who don't know me, my name is Omar Khatib, and I am the founder and CEO of JobPixel. And I want to thank you all for joining us today for our first installment of our first ever TA Summer webinar series. And it's sponsored by our company, JobPixel. Kicking off today's event, coming from an Army background, moving into hiring and recruiting, and to now co-hosting and challenging the norm of HR and the most dangerous podcast in the world is I'm excited to introduce Chad Sowash from the Chad and Cheese podcast. So Chad, please take it and introduce Susan.
Yeah, saying HR's most dangerous podcast is a very low bar, everybody. So just check it out. Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Chad Sowash, and the subject of today's discussion is, get ready, the new normal, recruiting and retaining talent in a pandemic. And I can hear you now. I know. New normal. What does that even mean? What was the old normal? Am I seriously in a place that we're going to call normal? Hybrid, remote, resignations, shuffling, salary changes. Yeah, I get it. I get it. Just hang in there with us as we talk about the pandemic and how it demonstrated through uncomfortable situations that we could change and make a better world for our people and ourselves. Now, to ensure this isn't just a one-man opinionated show, we've brought in Susan Collins, executive coach, networking expert, strategic job search consultant, contributing writer. Okay, stop. I'm not going to do a cheesy bio because Susan deserves more. Susan, let's hear from you. Give me a Twitter bio on Susan Collins, not the work bio. You. Let's hear about you. Yes.
So Twitter bio, mom of two, bonus mom of one, wife of more years than I want to say out loud because I'm hoping that the filter is working here. I believe that everybody should have a rescue dog, a thought partner, and what's the third one? I can't remember the third one. I think friends make the world go round, right?
Oh, so very nice.
I think that is really what it's about. If you don't have a network of really great people in your life, you need to find one.
Exactly. No, I went 3 because I have 3 rescue dogs.
Oh, so, okay, perfect.
So I'm there with the triad. Okay, so let's talk work. Quick work and experience check. Talk a little bit about Susan on the work side.
I had the most amazing corporate career that anyone can have. I'm a total talent acquisition geek. I love the strategies and the theories around getting people to the table. I love the negotiation process. Mm-hmm. I love the hunt of finding a great candidate and making an offer. And then I realized that it was just as fun to be on the other side, helping people with their career strategies. So I left corporate America a year and a half ago and started helping people with all the secrets I know from being on the other side. You know, I sat there and watched careers rise and fall for, again, more years than I want to say out loud. Mm-hmm. And now I am helping individuals versus organizations with their careers on the move.
That is awesome. So you went from the dark side to the light side. You're on the way to being a Jedi. I love it. I love it. Yeah. So, okay, so let's get some food for thought rolling with a quick poll. Ryan, launch the poll. That sounds kind of dirty, doesn't it? Hit the poll, Ryan. Okay, so as you're logging in your choices, I want to give a big thanks to the team at JobPixel for having this discussion and asking Susan and I to host. If you're thinking about using video to add a great experience to your hiring process and supercharge your talent brand, find your way over to jobpixel.com and check them out. So, okay, do we have... I can't vote. Oh, that's not right.
Oh, no, we can't vote. We already, I know your answer. So,
all right. Can we see the results? Results anywhere? Oh, we got about 50%. 50%. See, Ryan he's the guy behind the curtain. He can see all this stuff, and we're just sitting around waiting. Okay, there we go. Okay.
Oh.
Okay, Susan. So you surprised at the outcomes?
No. Not at all. I think that I hear from my clients, work-life balance. I don't want to go back to the office. How can I find something remote? And I want more money.
Well, it's all of those things, no question. Let's go ahead. Let's jump into salaries. I mean, we've seen salaries increase dramatically during the pandemic. Why is that? Did these jobs just become more valuable during the pandemic? Why are we seeing such large salary increases?
I think everything is starting to become more transparent, right? Like there are several states that have passed laws where they have to post salaries. So, I teach all my clients, if there's a similar job in New York or Colorado or California, go look at their posting in that state, see what they're offering there. There may be a little bit of a geo differential, but we're seeing companies who aren't even using geo differentials anymore. So they may be paying the same in every state. So why not leave New York City and go live in North Carolina and get the same salary? I think the other thing is people have realized that, they deserve more and they can get more. And we're starting to see that.
Yeah. Well, I think transparency says a lot. There's no question. I think it's also incredible that we have some vendors that are actually forcing the salary transparency discussion. And they're saying that, look, if you don't put your salary on these jobs, we're going to find a mean and we're going to put it on for you, whether you like it or not. So, I mean, it's getting pressed by government, right? We're seeing it like New York. We're seeing New York start to force that. And who doesn't want to do business in New York, right? So we'll see other states like Colorado, so on and so forth. But when it comes down to getting pressure from government and vendors, what did you think about that? What do you think about vendors actually standing up and starting to put this full court press on employers?
It's something that I, as a TA leader, had an issue with in the beginning because I worked for an organization that didn't have salaries out there. And so the vendor was actually making up the salaries for me and they were way off. So it caused a lot of strife for the candidate and for the employer because the salary wasn't right. People were showing up thinking they were going to make this much money and that's not what the salary paid, because we had a job title that could be a lot of different things. So really, had we had a job title that was a little more mainstream, I think the salary would have showed up correctly, but people were getting excited about this salary that they thought they could get for this job, and it wasn't the case. So I do think that it's good that they're forcing people to put salaries out there. It makes it easier on the candidate to understand what they're walking into, no more wasting time.
Yeah.
But it's still got a long way to go before we get it right.
Well, let's talk about geography. I am a big believer that if you are doing the exact same job in Kansas that you're doing, let's say Kansas City, that you're doing in Kansas City and you're doing in San Diego, you should be paid the same. What do you think?
I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting because we all know New York City is so expensive to live in. How do these companies start to budget differently than they have so that they can do that? I think that we saw a lot of people just pick up and move from these more expensive cities, go pursue their dreams, move back closer to their families, and they're reaping the rewards from it. I think that it sounds wonderful, but does that mean that they want to pull back in New York City and pay less in New York City? Not realistic. So you get to pick where you want to live, but what do you want to do?
Well, the question is, though, if I'm getting paid that, and we've always been funneled into this cost of living narrative, right? Which makes it easy for employers, because what I can do now is I can actually say, well, Chad, you live in Indiana, therefore your cost of living is much lower, so therefore your salary is much lower. So they're building a narrative, and you were on this side.
I was
building a narrative that actually pays people less than what they're worth, because they're doing the exact same job, whether they're in Indiana or in Kansas or what have you, as that individual is in New York and or California. And who cares where the job's being done, unless you have to clock in and you're on a line,
Right, right. I'm still on the fence on that one. I think that you get to choose your life. I think that as long as you're getting paid the same amount in your market, right, there we are going to start to see things start to progress. The bottom line is, are you being paid fairly for the job that you're doing? Are you getting paid fairly for what your competitors in your market are doing? Are you getting paid fairly for what your peers in the market are getting paid? Are men and women paid the same in your company? There's a lot to be said for that. But, good for you. If you're an organization that can get to that place, it's a great place to go.
Well, and to your point, and I think this is the biggest point, is we saw the women's soccer team find pay equity. Why? Why did that happen? Because of pay transparency. The only reason they knew to fight for equity is because they knew what the men were getting paid. Now, when we're not transparent as corporations, the big question is, what are we trying to hide?
Well, we're trying to hide that we are not proud of what we are paying. And so in the olden days, right, this, if you're going to negotiate, you're trying to get that number out of them first. I tell my clients, you need to say, I'm sure you have a range. If you'd like to share your range with me, I expect to be paid fairly and equitably for the job that you're asking me to do. Let's discuss the range and the number of years experience I bring to the table and find a number that works for both of us.
Yeah, agreed. I think what we're seeing here as we talk about, quote unquote, the new normal, we're starting to see that there is no normal. We live in a fluid society and the landscape changes. It always has, but it's changed so much more with the pandemic. That remote, hybrid, being able to try to get those individuals, and you don't even know where they live, possibly. You don't need to be able to get them to do the work that you need them to do, whether they're contractors or what have you. It's going to change the narrative dramatically. Let's go ahead and move on to culture. So when it comes to culture, personally, and tell me what you think about this. I feel that culture is really just something that has been manufactured by a company, right? It's not something that's real. I believe culture is something that is organic from employees. It can't be manufactured. Although, if you take a look at all the different conversations that we've seen for over a decade, you feel like companies are trying to manufacture a culture with ping pong tables and juice boxes and all those other things. What do you think about that?
I think the worst thing you can do is talk about culture when you don't have it, right? Culture to me is really about your supervisor, how your supervisor treats you. Can they have honest conversations with you? Can they develop you? Do they have the influence within the organization to help you get promoted? But culture is like this aspirational woo-woo thing that's out there that I think companies should be striving to do all of the right things. They should be, backing up their benefits and some of these other things. But I think at the end of the day, most people would rather have an extra, dollar or two in their paycheck than a ping pong table. So how do you understand what a full comprehensive package looks like to that candidate? And how do you just spend the time training your managers do the right thing by their people?
Yeah. Well, we always say that brand is what people say about you. And, I feel like, culture is what the people feel about
in
you.
The heart.
And Tamara says something here that, culture is set by leadership and flows downward. And I half agree, because I believe that leadership has a lot to do with it. But if you take the grassroots efforts of the actual employees and how they help you really mold that culture, and you're only trying to force it from the top, I really feel like it comes off inauthentic. What do you think about that?
It's seen it over and over again, where people talk about their culture and then they get into an organization and they're like, I don't even know what they were talking about. I don't know what the recruiter sold me. I don't understand. I've seen companies with horrible cultures, and a great leader can carry an entire department along with them down the road, and they can do great things in a place that's toxic. And then they come into these focus groups and they're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. That doesn't happen here. That doesn't happen here.
Yeah.
Culture is a lot about your leader, and can they lead and make a difference for you. So it is there, right? Like there is a underlying theme or world that most organizations feel, but it's a little different, right? It depends on who your leader is.
So what kind of impact did the pandemic have on us and maybe the optics around culture?
Well, the biggest impact I think that it had is that we believed that you couldn't work from home. Like, we can't send people home to work. Oh, Jenny needs to go to the dentist, and she wants to go home after she goes to the dentist and work from home for the rest of the day. So that was just like unheard of. And I think that we have this really great opportunity now that we see that you can work from home. And it's going to be interesting to see where we go from now, because some places are starting to push people back to work. And there are a lot of people that are like, hey, I like this 3 days a week. I like being able to see my kids when they get off the bus. I like being able to get my nails done at noon and come back and not have to worry about whatever is happening. Not that you're getting your nails done at noon, Chad, but
my hair
culture,
done.
Yeah, you got to get your hair done, right? I think that was the biggest change that we saw, and people are starting to say, wait, it can be done. Wait, I can do this in a different way, and I want to.
So if that's the case, why are we seeing, and I know this isn't happening broad scope, but it is happening, why are we seeing companies force back to work when remote, it worked?
I think some people are still in denial that it worked. I think that people, that old school CEO mentality, like, I want to see them butts in seats sitting at the desk doing their job. How do I know that it's happening if I can't see it?
Yeah. So this is really bleeding into work-life balance. But I mean, whenever I've heard culture during the pandemic, I've almost assimilated it to control, where it's like we would hear leaders say that, hey, our culture is in the office. And really what I heard them saying was, I can't control you the way that I need to unless you're in the office. Now let's roll into work-life balance. Work-life balance for many and many old school leaders just kind of would scoff at the idea of work-life balance, but the pandemic, I believe, demonstrated that it does exist. What do you think? Is this something that's bigger now than it ever has been?
I think people have experienced a new freedom, right? Like there's a new ability to run into the other room and check on somebody to make sure that they're doing it, to run into, so I'm the old OG. Like, I have worked from home for 25 years. I was doing it before anybody else was doing it. And somewhere along the way, I had this boss that told me every time I got up from my desk, I needed to let her know, because she couldn't handle it. And it was the first, I've been doing it for 15 years by this point. I didn't last much longer with her. I left, but you're right. It is a little bit of control and wanting to understand what they're doing, but we need to look at the bigger picture. The work is still getting done. And if we can get the work done and people can feel productive and good about the other things that maybe we've sacrificed, then it's working.
So one thing that from what I'm hearing, especially from the old school, kind of like, hey, boomer generation, it's like we need to be more fluid in how we treat people, the autonomy that we provide people. And that's a scary word for many old school leaders, is autonomy. If I give them autonomy to do their job, then I'm not going to know what's happening. So what do we have to do to ensure that these old school leaders, the ones in many cases who are getting the decisions to actually bring their teams back into work, and then we're seeing a lot of resignations. At that point, what do we, is this a training situation, or is this they just got a burnout and we've got to get new managers in place?
I think that this is a great place for leadership to step in and talk about ROI. What are the challenges of the business? I think that, sometimes you step away so far that you are making assumptions. And so if you don't know what's going on, you need to be asking, you need to be digging in. And there are some challenges, right? Like, what if you're an introvert, you're working from home, you're getting the job done, but you're not beating your chest talking about what a great job you're doing? Then how do you build communication vehicles that help ensure that people aren't getting left out, people aren't getting lost and left behind, and still do what's right for the employee? And I've talked to clients who do want to go back to the office. So it is that individual preference that we have the opportunity to make our employees happier than ever, just by knowing them, understanding them, holding them accountable to doing their job, right? That's, at the end of the day, that's really all it is. It's a job. If it wasn't a job, they wouldn't pay you. You'd do it for free. So it is that accountability piece. So we have the leaders in place that can hold people accountable, that have good communication skills, that understand how to follow up and get what they need out of their department.
Yeah. So it's going to be much harder for that one-dimensional iron fist manager to work in, to work moving forward in this new landscape, correct?
Correct. You have to build trust. You have to trust. And if the trust is broken, then you follow up.
Agreed. So we've got a question here from Megan. She said, I wonder about Susan's experience with training for managers to improve retention, which right now, if not everybody's doing, oh my God, what's your problem? So what's your experience on that, Susan?
With retention, it is that manager's job. And I've done a lot of things in my past from and L&D kind of took on that piece in partnership with us, but it's about the 30-day check-in with HR, the 90-day check-in. It's about the day interviews and understanding what they're doing. And then lots of organizations have that annual, what do they call it? The employee survey. Let's do the employee survey. I think there's nothing more frustrating than an employee survey that isn't transparent, doesn't have feedback, and doesn't show you how they've moved the needle. An employee survey is just something thrown into the wind that makes people more disgruntled because they don't know what you do after it. So it is about how transparent is your organization and what kind of communication do you have when you know that there's an issue. And when times are bad too, it's okay to say, this stinks, we know this stinks, and we are working on it, and here are the 3 things we're doing, or we can't work on it right now. Like, it's just what's happening in the industry, but we're aware of it and we're looking for answers.
Have you ever had KPIs for retention and or promotions?
So KPIs for retention were not something that we talked about. We looked at it and we were always looking to lower. You have to look at the trends, and when people start moving in a department, you've got to start talking to the leaders. But it wasn't part of my review process.
Should it be?
I think it should be part of the manager's review process. Like retention, the recruiter owns them the first 30 days, like make sure we got the right person through the door. And then that's the manager's job to retain, teach, engage, promote.
Excellent. Okay. So let's dig into this a little bit more. So what are candidates looking for now that, we're in this different landscape. What are you seeing? These three areas: higher salary expectations, culture, work-life balance. But what has really changed their mindset, and what is their main focus? Is it just money?
I think it's the balance and the remote. Like they want to have control over how, when, where they're showing up, and they want to be paid fairly. And the great thing is more than ever now, they understand what fairly is. Where before, they kept their head down, they did their jobs. We told them, don't talk to your peer about salary. That's something confidential between us. Now it is blasted out everywhere. And it's really fun to coach someone about going into an interview and not giving them a number, or giving them a really big number because this is what all the data shows.
Yeah.
And then them coming back and being like, they didn't even flinch. They didn't flinch. I said the number. They're like, okay, I think we can do that. It is about showing off your skills, showing off what you have been able to produce and what you've been able to replicate in your career, and what skills you have to bring to the table for them to make a difference.
Yeah, well, you had said something that really sparks a part of the conversation that we haven't hit yet. So, I'm always thinking, is it really the Great Resignation? Because we're hearing the Great Resignation, the reshuffle, and a myriad of other labels. But what I was feeling is more that it was an awakening. The workforce woke up during the pandemic, which led to resignations, reshuffling, higher salaries. So whatever you want to call it, what really matters when it comes down to attracting and retaining talent today compared to yesteryear?
Okay, so let's change this. We're going to do this right now. We're going to call it the Great Awakening. And what really matters is, can you deliver on the story that you're telling them during the interview process?
Mm-hmm.
And does that story align with not only their professional needs, does it align with their personal lifestyle that they aspire to live, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they know now they can make more. And does it align with their values? Because their values are something that they're talking about more and more. I value being home with my kids on Thursday night for soccer. For 10 years, I was the crazy parent running, out of the office trying to get to the soccer game, and 5 of you were stopping me on the way out the door. And now I can just turn off my computer, walk out the door, head to soccer. I even have time to find the cleats and the socks and get everybody ready. So we are more aligned with our own personal values because we got to spend time home with our friends, our family,
Mm-hmm.
our dogs, dog walking, whatever it is. Things have changed inside. And so we are now in the great awareness.
The awakening.
Awakening, yes.
Yeah, I think one thing that changed dramatically was starting to call individuals who hated their job, didn't get paid well, essential. And they showed up every day during a pandemic. And when the supply chain started to show issues, and we started talking about the essential workers who were essential to supply chain and us getting what we want every single day, that created this wave, I think, of awakening for many of the lower wage workers, where we saw a good amount of the boost in salary. So, and you take a look at that along with CEOs doubling their salary or bonuses during that time frame. I mean, it's one of those things where I think, again, we've become more awakened to the situation in the current landscape. But during this current landscape, it's been hell for talent acquisitions and recruiters. I mean, burnout has not been our friend. So what do we do to support talent acquisition to be able to give them what they need, so that, again, talent acquisition is the engine, the heart of every single company. Without talent in the organization, everything falls apart. So what do we do to support, and how does TA actually get that support?
we need to understand what TA is doing. Talent acquisition is that department in HR where the VP has not always come from that. Maybe the VP has run benefits and been promoted, or the VP was an HR business partner. And talent acquisition is not this magic place where they get up in the morning and they turn on their computer and there are 27 resumes, and then they just go through and go, oh, this one, here you go. Talent acquisition is hunters and gatherers. They, get the job, that they get the permission for the budget, they get the job description from the hiring manager. The hiring manager has put something on there that says unicorn, I want these 27 skills. They go out and post the job, and then they need time to go out and hunt and find that perfect candidate, because a lot of times that perfect candidate isn't applying, and we have loaded them up with so many requisitions that they don't always have time to balance the hunting and the gathering. And then on top of that, if we have not put the right partners into talent acquisition, including, ops and sourcing and somebody to help them navigate really tricky executive interview schedules, then they're trying to do it all. And they're just on this hamster wheel. And it's the Janet Jackson job. They wear a headset and it's, what have you done for me lately? So they're only as good as their last hire, even though their KPIs, they may have hired 10 people last month.
So, I mean, that's a support and resource issue for the most case, right? So why are we not getting the support and resources that we need?
Talent acquisition has to step up to the table and talk about the business needs. Is this affecting your business when you are short these 20 positions? And then if they don't understand how to do that, we need to bring people into the organization to help them understand how to build their business case and explain how this is hurting the organization. The hiring manager will tell you how it's hurting the organization, but when we can put the dollars and the ROI to the business case and explain that you are going to be missing, $20,000 in sweater sales over the next 2 weeks, because over 2 weeks in 6 months, because you are down a sweater designer, it starts to get a little more real.
Agreed. And I have to say, if I hear another HR TA professional say that we're a cost center, that in itself demonstrates to me that you don't know who you are and what you do. Because first and foremost, as I'd said before, a company cannot run without talent. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. A company cannot run without talent. So therefore, the developers can't develop code. The sweater manufacturer can't get new designs to sell new sweaters for Christmas, right? You don't have salespeople. You don't have customer service people. The thing that I need talent acquisition to do is focus on understanding how what they do on a daily basis actually impacts the bottom line. Cost per hire. You can talk about that in your own little TA circles. Never, ever, ever take that to the C-suite. If you're doing that, you're doing yourself a disservice, and you're getting pat on the head because those are little kid numbers. Nobody cares about that. How does that actually affect, as what you were saying, Susan, how does that affect the bottom line? If I have let's say my number one, and everybody think of it now, what's the number one position, the vital position that you need to fill today? So ask yourself, what is that actually costing the organization on a daily basis when that position is not filled? If you don't know what that number is, find out what it is. Then start to understand on more of a broad scale, more of those positions, teach your team on how to actually build that formula. And you're going to have to do that with the hiring managers. You can't do it by yourself, right? So you can do it with the CRO, the CMO, some of the ops teams, those types of things. But what we need to do, and I'm sick of hearing the cost center and we don't get a seat at the table. Well, we don't get a seat at the table because we don't understand our impact on the business, not hiring, the business, because the hiring piece is the biggest impact on that business.
when you start doing this, prepare yourself for frustration, right? Because what's going to happen is you're going to start talking about how important this is and how this affects the bottom line and how, you know, you have to change things. And then a lot of times that conversation is overlooked. Like, it is not something that they're going to take from you easily. And then they start talking about then you start adding on top of it, you know, what is the actual wage out there within the organization. They start talking about compression within the organization. It is a full scale, much bigger issue. But the place to start, you're right, Chad, is to start with the business case and don't let up. Keep going, because it's not something that they're going to pick up on right away or be able to fix right away. It's a big issue.
Yeah. Well, and here's a little cheat move that I actually learned from a friend of mine, Amy Butchko from SAIC. The CRO was asking why, and we're talking about sales. So the CRO, other than the CEO, is probably one of the most influential people in the organization. They were wondering why they couldn't get their sales roles filled, and she took them through the process of applying for a job. And then the experience and what was actually happening, she collaborated and partnered with the CRO to blow up their tech stack and build from ground zero. Because why? She made a business case that the CEO, influenced by the CRO, understood, right? And that all came down to revenue, because they don't care about your cost per hire, kids. They care about the revenues generated. They care about the margins and those types of things, right? So that being said, what's the best with all of this and everything that we're trying to build today? What's the best way to keep our TA teams happy, especially when we're talking about overextended recruiters?
You've got to get realistic about what they're doing, what you're expecting from them. You've got to help them start understanding how to build the business case. And you do need to stop looking for purple squirrels. I think this is a very competitive market. It's really important that, you know, we are looking at the top 4 skills that we need, and the hiring managers can actually train and develop them on the skills that they don't have. If somebody is applying for a job and they hit all of the criteria, they've already outgrown your job. So help your recruiters by looking at their rec load, understanding the difficulty of the jobs that they're recruiting for, ensure that you've got the right salaries approved for the job, and then give them enough time to hunt and gather. If you've got a really difficult job and they're carrying 40 recs, they don't have the time to hunt for that perfect candidate. If they're not applying and you're getting frustrated and you're posting and praying, posting and praying is a pipe dream.
Yeah. So quick question around that, because the post and pray, which you were just talking about, companies spend in overall billions of dollars a year in recruitment marketing. And what they're doing is they're actually pulling in the same candidates that they already have in their database, right? They've paid for these people 5, 6, 10 times before, right? These people have applied for positions. They know your brand. They know enough of your brand that they want to work for your brand. So how do we start to engage and start to help through automation our people get rid of the administrivia and get to the talent much faster, especially the ones that were at least interested in a position and our brand before?
We're going to talk about this on another webinar, but I think there are a lot there. So we're kind of like pulling the lines there, but I think there are a lot of things you can do. First of all, you need to understand who the persona is. Second of all, I think in a lot of cases, the resume is dead, right? So how do you, and that's how I became involved with JobPixel, is how do you get in front of a hiring manager? Everybody just wants 3 minutes in front of a hiring manager to talk about how what I can do for you. What can I do from you? How can I contribute to the bottom line? How can I make a difference?
Mhm.
And we've got to find a way to get through people faster. And we need to be more open-minded about what paper says and figure out how to get 15, 20 minutes on the phone from them so that they can tell us what they can do too. Because I've seen a lot of different resumes out there, and some of the best resumes don't represent the best candidates. And so we have to really help our TA team, give them the time back to do the job that they need to do, which is talking to people.
Yeah, agreed. Which, automation can help with. And what I'm hearing from you over and over and over is one word that I like to call care, right? It almost feels like we have stopped caring for not just candidates, but also for our team. And we need to get more into that, especially in this more remote kind of work style and landscape where they were somewhat disconnected in some cases because we have some of these old style leaders. Care seems to be the operative word that we need to start really gravitating toward, more empathy and care. What do you think about that? And does a leader change in TA and gravitate more toward a more of a management instead of a leader model?
Oh, it's a great question. I think we join TA because we care, right? Like we care for them and we want to do the right thing for them. I think that there is a lot of strategy that goes into TA that people don't realize, right? There is a lot of strategy behind the scenes. And so they think that, recruiters are just the happy people picking up the phone all day and, making phone calls, but they are not putting into play the structure and the stuff behind the scenes that is going to give them the relief that they need, and caring and listening and understanding their job is going to make a big difference. Okay.
Well, let's go ahead and move on to the power of networking. We're going to talk a little bit about this, and then we'll hit some Q&A. Talk through how recruiting went from an in-person to a virtual landscape and how networking can help recruiters reach outside of their markets.
You used to invite people into your office, and now you're inviting yourself into their home. So,
say that again. That was good.
So we used to have this thing where we would say, Chad, I really loved your resume. We had a great conversation. Come into the corporate office. You would put on your suit and your tie, and you would come into the office, and we'd sit down and talk about things. Now we've really kind of flipped things, and we're like, hey, Chad, we had a great conversation. We'd like to come into your home on video and have a conversation with you, and we're going to judge everything that's happening behind you. We know you've got dogs and kids and all of these other things. And so it's just about taking that moment to let people be people and to step back and get to know someone, right? The skills are important, but understanding where they're coming from, what they're doing is important too. I know that there are a lot of people that don't like to do video interviews because they're worried about the background. I get that. I've got a very busy background that you can't see right now. And I also have 3 dogs locked up, 2 kids on, and a husband doing an interview in the back room. So you are in my house, and it's everything behind the scenes here is chaotic. But I think that we need to take time to get to know people, and we have to pick up the phone and network. What is it? 86% of people find a job from their network. And I think it's another 36% of that. It's like the connection from the network. And so networking is just such a critical piece to being able to connect the dots, right? I know Laura, who knows somebody who's really great at SEO. This SEO person knows somebody that's really great at design, and I need a designer. This designer's not right, but he knows someone who's looking for a job. And that's how the world works. And that's to me, that's like the most exciting part of the job, is the connecting all of the dots. but there's not a lot of time for that. And so as a recruiter, if you're not taking a couple hours a week just to network and catch up with people in your industry and find out what's going on and find out what your competitors are doing and be able to speak to the industry as a whole, you're missing out.
So this is going to be an interesting question because I think most of us have been networking for a few years, but if somebody, yeah, just a couple, if somebody's just getting started into the network scene or they really want to amplify their network today, how would they do that?
So everybody says LinkedIn, right? Like go to LinkedIn, you've got to have 500 connections and blah, 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 all that stuff, which is all true, right? It's all true. But pick up the phone at the beginning on Monday, write down 2 people that you think are interesting or that you haven't talked to. It's easiest to start with former colleagues or, friends, and pick up the phone and say, I need to know somebody new. I'm trying to build my network, and ask for an introduction. Like that's the best thing you can do is ask for an introduction. I've got a LinkedIn group that's got 19,000 followers, and I'm constantly putting in the notes, so-and-so, do you know so-and-so, you should meet, right? And tagging people, because the more people connect with people they don't know, the more it expands. So for me, it still is about the phone call or the email to check in that says, I know that last time we talked, you had said your son was sick. I wanted to check in and see how he was doing today because you're important to me. And it's that personal connection. It's why we do it.
I love that. One thing I would like to say on the other side, don't start making connections and then trying to sell them as soon as you just made, that is kind of like the most slimy feeling that you're going to have. But I see a lot of entry level and mid who are really trying to blast out and say, hey, we've got great services or we've got this great candidate or what have you. I think you're 100% right. We build our careers on relationships, and those relationships don't happen overnight. And not all of them happen on LinkedIn. Sometimes you got to, pick up the phone and use it, or any way that you want to use it. You can do the Janet Jackson headset if you want to.
But that's why it doesn't work. And I heard that a lot over the pandemic. So I started helping, these amazing people. And I started hearing over and over again, I wish I would have talked to this person. I wish I would have called that person. I wish now I feel bad. Now I don't have a job. Now I feel bad and I need to make a phone call. So a couple things you need to remember. I do believe deep down in my soul that people just want to help people. So even if you haven't had a conversation in a long time, what is the saying? Like the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time to plant a tree is today.
Right now.
So if you haven't talked to them and you need something, don't send them an email saying you need something. Pick up the phone and say, hey, Ted, you know what? You and I haven't talked in a long time. I feel awful about that. Unfortunately, I have found myself in a situation where I need to reach out to some people that I know, have connections, and I've put myself in a spot, admittedly, that I haven't kept in touch as much as I should have, but I wanted to just see if maybe you could connect me with so-and-so. I thought saw you were connected with them, and they've got a job open at ABC. Can you help me?
Well, Susan, I could talk to you all day. As a matter of fact, we should get drinks and we should finish this. But there's some Q&A. Perfect. There's some Q&A that needs to happen. Take it away, Ryan. What do we have out there? Anybody in the chat, go ahead and throw that in there. Katie did say Slack groups, a great way to start connections. And there's no question, you have to go out to the communities in which you want to play. If you're looking at a tech community, you're not looking on LinkedIn. Right? You're not looking on LinkedIn. You might be on GitHub. There are tons of other communities. But what do we have for questions here? Higher up and earlier.
I think there was a good one from Megan earlier, just regarding whether there was any sort of formula with inputs for trying to calculate bottom line contribution.
Let me hit that up first because that was mine, and I'll let Susan do all the smart stuff because that's what she does. It's fairly simple. When you're going in to talk to sales, it's going to be an entirely different way of understanding how they impact the bottom line versus somebody who's developing a product, right? So you have to be able to go through, and the beautiful part about this collaboration with many of these different departments, they might also feel like they have been a cost center. Again, the talent that is there, it's not about cost. This is about production. This is about sales. This is about retention. There are all these different aspects that you need to think about from a business standpoint, not about cost per hire, right? About how the effect happens on a daily basis and directly impacts the bottom line in an either positive or negative way. Susan?
I think that you're right. It depends on the department, but there's some great equations out there that you can just pull off of SHRM as a starting place to, look at the business depending on, which department you're trying to measure. And it's an easy cheater formula spreadsheet that you start plugging things out in. You sit down with the hiring manager, which is really important, because as you start to have that conversation with them, they start to see the numbers moving as you're putting things in there. And they're like, oh, but what about this? And oh, so-and-so was here for 20 years. So he had a network that was, so you start to talk about all of the risks to the business too. And that number becomes bigger than that original output, because you understand, what you're bringing in is not going to be what you're losing a lot of times.
Oh, SHRM, that's the Society for Human Resource Management. There we go, SHRM. Not one of my favorites, but they still have stuff. Okay, so let's jump up real quick. That was Megan's. Okay, so Jennifer asks, Susan, what is your experience with healthcare talent retention and sourcing?
So I haven't done a ton in healthcare. You may have a little more to add to that. I know that it's been a very tough year. I know that I've got friends that do consulting in the business. I know HireClick does consulting on that side of the business, and they've got a lot that they can add. Do you have something you want to add to healthcare? I don't want to just speak to it and lie.
Yeah. So I think what we take a look at with healthcare is they are also looking for autonomy. You take a look at the opportunity to pretty much pick up shifts in different healthcare systems, right? So if you can be more flexible and provide them with an opportunity to have more autonomy within your healthcare system, then again, that's never a bad thing. But go back to those three things that we talked about. Number one, salary. I can't think of another position even more than a doctor, than a nurse, that deserves damn good pay, right? I mean, because they are the caretakers. I mean, they're there most of the time. Doctor pops in, he does his thing. Yes, he might have to do a surgery. That's pretty important. Don't get me wrong. But then the nurses, I mean, come on, they deserve the higher salaries, company culture, and the opportunity for a work-life balance as well. So I think it still is within the realm of what pretty much every human being is looking for. The question is, what kind of construct are they working in, which is different than maybe like a sales individual or what have you?
It still comes down to, I think, what everybody wants, right? Like they want to have the autonomy, they want to have the respect, they want to be paid fairly, and they want to have that life outside of just coming to work every day. They don't want to feel like a number.
What are my favorite Michelle? You're gonna have to give me more on that one. Okay, so how do you make an impact or change if you do have one of those old school CEOs who like to see people in seats, try to get them to open their eyes to the remote hybrid world, especially? So if you have an old world CEO, how do you actually get them to open their eyes to the world today?
You gotta start building alliances, right? Like, do you have another executive sponsor within the organization that you can go to that can start to help influence that, right? Like, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. Build your business case, talk about why it's happening. I think, you can look at, do an A/B test, right? Post a job that says, in the office every day and post a job that says you're doing the exact same thing, but it's remote, and talk about what that, where that delta is on who's applying to each of these jobs. But you're going to have to start spelling it out to them that the world is changing. You need to understand what your competitors are doing.
Yeah.
If company ABC down the road, who makes the same widget as you make, is letting everybody make widgets from home, then they're going to win. Even if they're paying, a little less, they're going to win in some situations because people want that flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to know your market. You need to build a business case, and you need to, start to figure out who's influencing that CEO. And if you don't have that seat at the table, what business case are you going to build to come to the table and help them out? That's our job as leaders, to help them understand what's happening in the world today.
Yeah. I go back to David Solomon in JP Morgan Chase, when they demanded everybody come back into the office, and only 50% of them came back into the office. Now, did they fire the other ones? No, because how do you fire half of your staff, right? So, to be able to, those are some of the stark realities. And if you go in, once again, with some of these formulas that we talked about, in being able to help them understand the business impact, as soon as they understand the business impact and alternatives. Now, here's the current state of the business, and here's the impact on the bottom line. Do you want alternatives to try to demonstrate, or to try to show different ways so that we can evolve and we can have a much less negative impact on the bottom line, and we can start to find the talent that we need? Those are the hard questions. And then ask those questions every week or every day, or as much face time as you get with the CEO.
My two favorite things, right? Like, what's the risk, right? Let's talk about the risk. And what if we experimented, right? What if you just start with, what if we experimented trying? An experiment to somebody doesn't feel like it's permanent. An experiment could be 2, 4, 6 weeks, 6 months, but let's experiment and set parameters and see how it goes.
Yeah. So to your point, Michelle, what better than SHRM? I'm a big fan of definitely creating those groups. They can be virtual groups, or they can be just like coffee groups that you have with your friends that are in TA, where you are sitting there to work together, 2 heads, 3 heads, 4 heads better than one. So instead of trying to go to your national society group to find a silver bullet, they don't exist, right? So what we need to do is we need to do the hard work as business people. We can take those formulas, but once we start collaborating internally with those business owners, right, those hiring managers, and we start to have these discussions with our peers throughout the nation, throughout the world, then that's when we become stronger, better business leaders.
Everybody should have a thought partner. So if you don't have a thought partner, you are missing out. Yeah. My thought partner did the exact same job I did at another organization. We had a level of trust. We were not exact competitors, but there was some crossover, and we could have those what if conversations and dream big, think big, try new things. And when you have a thought partner, you don't go into a conversation guarded. Your brain is really already opened up to the what ifs and the possibilities. And it's amazing when you hang out with someone who dreams as big or bigger than you, what you can accomplish. So we get so tied down to, like, we have all these company secrets and we can't tell anybody. And, if you're making widgets at A and making widgets at B, you're still making widgets and you're still coming up against the same issues. If you are, building rocket ships at A and rocket ships at B, there might be a little bit that you don't want to share, but people are people, and you're going to see that crossover. So why not find that thought partner who can help you figure things out?
Excellent. Well, like I said, Susan, we need to go out and have a drink so we can finish this. But if you could shut it down, because some of these people they're coming off of lunch now.
Okay. So thanks for joining us today. And thank you for JobPixel for hosting. Next week, I'm going to flip. So next week, I get to moderate, and we're going to talk to Terry Arnott. She's the Vice President, yes, of Strategic Consulting Services at HireClick. We're going to talk about maximizing your talent acquisition budget. So if you want to talk budgets, this is the person to talk to. She is brilliant. And if you want to sign up for the rest of the TA Summer Series with JobPixel, you can do that at jobpixel.com/webinars. And I think Ryan's going to post it in the comments so that you've got that. But we have 3 more coming. Chad, this was fun. It was such a pleasure. And we hope to see you next week. We've got some really exciting, cool people coming up. So it just gets better from here.
Excellent.
Chad,
Looking
thanks for
forward
sharing
to
it today. Awesome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's been a blast. And again, thanks to Omar and the rest of the JobPixel crew. It's been fun.